Hello, and welcome to this video presentation on education records and non-education records. Education records possess a vast amount of important student information. Being able to differentiate between education records and non-education records is vital because it will allow you to determine which records need to be protected in order to be compliant with FERPA. In this video presentation, you will gain a better understanding of what education records are and how they differentiate from non-education records. According to the United States Department of Education, an education record is a record that contains information that directly relates to the student and is in possession by an educational institution, an agency, or a party that acts as an agency or institution. According to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, schools are not allowed to disclose personal information from a student's educational record to a third party unless the student has provided written consent. While there are many exceptions to this rule, here are a few of the most notable exceptions. School officials can access personal information in education records if they have a legitimate educational interest. Schools can also disclose information from a student's education record without consent to another school that the student plans on enrolling in. Institutions are also allowed to disclose information in student education records when the information has been classified as directory information, which we will discuss in greater detail in the next module. Based on the legal principles of FERPA, any documented information that is related to a student and that is in possession of an institution or its personnel is considered an educational record. Examples of education records can include grades/transcripts, test scores such as the SAT and ACT, academic coursework, student class schedules, and academic advising records. Personally identifiable information on records such as student information numbers is also considered an education record. Non-education records are records that do not directly relate to the student and are not in possession by an educational institution or its personnel. Non-education records include law enforcement records, employment records, medical records, post-attendance records, tax records, and sole possession records that are not accessible by another person. These records are not considered educational records and are therefore not protected by FERPA. Regardless of the storage media that is used, student education records can be found in a number of different ways. Education records can be found on a physical document in any administrative or faculty office. Education records can be found on the screen of an electronic mobile device, such as a smartphone, a tablet, as well as a computer screen. Lastly, student education records can also be found on sticky notes or on paper that is used during the performance of one's duties, such as an academic advising session, for example. This is why it is important for you to monitor your work environment in order to prevent this important information from being disclosed to the general public. In summary, being able to differentiate between student education records and non-education records is very important as an employee in higher education because it will allow employees to determine which records need to be protected in order to be compliant with FERPA. An education record is a form of documentation that is related to a student and that is in possession of an institution or its personnel. Non-education records are records that do not directly relate to a student and are not in possession by an educational institution or its personnel. Lastly, despite the storage media that is being used, student education records can be found in a number of ways. We hope that you enjoyed this brief video presentation on education records and non-education records. Thanks for watching.